Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by oldsschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with manicexpression.com, thecomicbookcast.com, the reopened Nickelodeon Studios in Orlando, Florida Facebook page, and the PlayStation YouTube channel.
I'm Mack. I was just an average kid until an accident changed my life. And since then, nothing's been the same. My best friend Ray thinks it's cool. My sister Annie thinks I'm a science project. I can't let anyone else know, not even my parents. I know the chemical plant wants to find me and turn me into some experiment. But you know something? I guess I'm not so average anymore.
Welcome to this week's episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and I am here with a special guest. You may know her from her YouTube channel, Hayden Claire Heroes. She does comic book reviews, she does movie reviews, TV reviews, and she's currently working on a new comic series called Like Father, Like Daughter. I have Comic Uno herself, Kat. Welcome aboard to Casual Chats.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this episode.
Yeah, we haven't spoken to each other since at least almost like a year ago, since, comic book cast member Joel invited us over to do the season 2 recap of Legend of Korra.
Yeah, that was a fun podcast.
Oh, I loved it. It was such a blast.
It was.
It's such a shame that, Joel didn't do a season 3 recap. I think maybe because season 4 just came in so quickly. I guess he didn't have the time.
Definitely.
Yeah, but, right before we get into this starting topic, I recently saw your discussion about Season 4 of Legend of Korra, and I gotta say that, it was pretty well done. I'm really looking forward to where the direction is, because it is so amazing.
Yeah, this show has just grown so much, and thank you for watching my episode review. I'm so looking forward to seeing where it goes, and I'm looking forward to see how they deconstruct Korra. It seems like they're going that route, and I'm excited.
I'm really excited about it, too. Like, at the end of episode 1, season 4, and you see how broken she is, both physically and mentally, and the way that her face looks so lost, and then when she said that line about when the guy said, hey, whatever happened to the Avatar, and she said, I would know, it just struck with me, because in the scene when we first got introduced to her in the first episode, she was all like, I'm the Avatar, and then when she says, I really wouldn't know, when she loses to the Earthbender, it was like, wow.
Yeah, it's just that I thought it was so powerful, that last scene, because we didn't see her throughout the whole episode. I'm glad they did that, that last 2 minutes where we just see Korra. And I made a line on my review that I was like, wow, that's actually a really good line. Because I was expecting her to be in the wheelchair in the beginning of season 4. I didn't know about the 3-year jump. And I was like, even though physically she's out of the wheelchair, emotionally, she's still in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
And you see that.
Yeah, I think in the next episode is when they'll explain about what happened during those 3 years, but I know that we're way off topic, so let's get back on track, but I just really wanted to bring that up because, you're also doing, like, a lot of episode recaps on, Green Arrow and, a whole bunch of other great shows, Gotham, and just wanted to bring that up since, Kevin and I are doing the Nickelodeon tribute, and we don't do episode recaps, we just review the shows as a whole, but I just wanted to talk about it from someone who, also likes, Nickelodeon stuff. And with today's topic, we are discussing about the 1994 live-action series, The Secret World of Alex Mack. The Secret World of Alex Mack debuted on October 7th, 1994, created by Thomas W. Lynch and Ken Lipman. The concept behind it is that when Lynch was a young kid, his father worked at a power plant, and he thought to himself, what would happen if I tried some of the chemicals that my father would work around with? And he built the idea from there. And originally, Alex Mack was a boy, but then the ideas were tweaked a little bit, and then they decided to make Alex into a girl. So right after Clarissa Explains It All ended around the same time, this was kind of like their attempt of being a follow-up to having Larissa Olnek, who played as Alex Mack, being the next Melissa Joan Hart. So, right before we discuss about the show, how did you get first introduced to it? Because you recently had a birthday, I believe, right?
I did. I turned 20 this year, so when did the show come out? 1994, right? Or
Yes.
1993?
In 1994, yes.
So I was born 1994, so
Wow.
I did not live through Secret World of Alex Mack, but I did watch it in high school, and I grew to love the show. And I'm so glad that I did, because it became one of my favorite shows. And, of course, we'll explain that. But I came along through it through the internet, actually. I didn't watch it when it first came out. And not a lot of people knew about the show. And especially in my age range, not a lot of people know it. Maybe, 3 or 5 years older than me. Everyone knows Secret World of Alex Mack.
Yeah, because I was 8 years old when the show debuted. I'm 28. So I remember when I first saw it, and I immediately was really captivated by the show because it was so much different than Clarissa Explains It All. And it was really different than any other show at the time because it featured not only a girl living her everyday life, but also it featured that she had powers. So, and I thought to myself, wow, that's actually really interesting. It's like a female superhero. I mean, sure, we had things at the time, we had X-Men, the animated series, and, I think this was like a few years before the Powerpuff Girls came out, and it showcased about young girls having superpowers, but we didn't really have a lot of female superheroes, and I think that the way that they were able to mix it, at the time was pretty interesting, and actually it was like way ahead of its time, but we'll be discussing more in detail about it later. So, I guess the first thing we can discuss about is Season 1. Now, Season 1 of Alex Mack, it showcases it's about a young girl named Alex Mack, and she's starting off middle school. And she feels awkward, she feels uncomfortable, she's kind of like, the black sheep of the family because her sister Annie is like this really intelligent scientist, and both of her parents work at the power plant run by Danielle Atron. And all of a sudden, one day, they were working on this secret kind of chemical known as GC-161, and the driver, Dave, was supposed to deliver it over to the other company, and then all of a sudden, he kind of, not pays attention, crashes it, and Alex is completely covered in it, and then she develops the powers of telekinesis, shooting lightning from her fingers, and turning into, this puddle of goo, and she can be able to crawl around and stuff. What were your opinions on Season 1 when you first saw it again after all these years?
Season 1 is not my least favorite season, but yeah, it probably is. I love the season, don't get me wrong, I love every season, but if I had to pick a least favorite season, it probably was Season 1. I think it's just because it's harder to relate to Alex and Raymond because they're so young. They're middle school. And Season 2, I feel like they grew up a lot. Raymond looks different. Alex, too, has kind of changed her style. So, and also I feel like there are definitely more one-shot episodes where I love the fun episodes, but it's less about the plant and more of we have to defeat the plant. Actually, I would say less about Alex in a way. It was more about, how do we defeat the plant? And it's always these one-shot episodes. But I think Alex as a character grew throughout Season 2 and Season 4, between those seasons. So, yeah, but I still love Season 1. It's a fun season, but I feel like they're a bit too young for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. Season 1 is definitely my least favorite because when I rewatched the 13 episodes all over again, I felt like it didn't know what it wanted to be. I felt like it had a little bit of an identity crisis. You had this interesting story about that there was this chemical plant who, for the most part, pretty much took over this entire town of Paradise Valley. Danielle Atron was the main person who was in charge of giving these people jobs, the school, there's some streets named after her, everybody follows her rules. And then, you have this really weird chemical, GC-161 that supposedly is a weight loss drug. And then the problem is that they didn't really deal too much into it. It felt very vague. And you wonder, what is this? I mean, why are they doing this? Throughout the first season, Dave, for the most part, was a fairly useless character. Even, Vince, who is Danielle's assistant, even pointed this out, that he's useless. And I thought to myself, if they would have cut Dave, from this part, nothing would have changed because Dave was the one who caused the car accident that caused Alex to get her powers, with the dumping of the chemicals, and he doesn't even remember her. He doesn't even know if it's a female or a male. He barely got a good look at her, so it's he's really, kind of confused and lost, and he's just in the way.
No, I can totally agree. I mean, I think Dave's character got a lot more interesting in Season 3 and Season 4, which we'll get to.
Yes, we'll definitely get to.
Yeah, and he becomes more of a meaningful character. But season 1, I agree. Like, he's just kind of a lackey there for comedic relief. Even Vince, I don't think he was the best villain.
No, he
wasn't. More the villain than Daniel Atron. I wish they focused more on Daniel Atron.
I agree, because Danielle was like the matriarch of the whole plant, and she was the one who was behind everything. But at the same time, we mostly focused on Vince and Dave. And, the first time that we got introduced to Vince meeting up with Dave, and you had the sun shining on his face, I'm like, did J.J. Abrams shoot this scene? Because it looks so goofy. The way he was acting was so overly dramatic, it was just laughable.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's why they were doing it, was to make it laughable.
I know, but still, I mean, considering that they worked at a power plant and, untested chemicals just dumped on a kid, and, it was top secret and nobody knew about it, you would think they would treat it a little bit more seriously, but, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, but it's a kid's show, but still, I mean, it was just goofy. But yeah, I do agree that they should have focused a lot more on Danielle. Another thing that I noticed about was that for the most part, a lot of the students that were in the school, they were not that interesting. Like,
not this season.
No. Like, for example, Jessica, the bully, who was played by Jessica Alba. Oh, God. You as a comic book fan, you definitely know a lot about her because she was in the first 2 Fantastic Four movies.
Yeah, she was in Dark Angel, which is a really good action TV show. If you want to see a good show with Jessica Alba, I recommend Dark Angel.
Speaking of which, the reason Jessica Alba was the only reason why season 1 of Alex Mack was ever released.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
that's fine.
Because if you look at the cover of season 1, it just showcases, Jessica Alba's debuting role in the secret world of Alex Mack, and then, they never released season 2 and 3 because that was when her career was pretty much down. I think that Fantastic Four 2 Silver Surfer kind of helped that.
Definitely, yeah.
She's just like your stereotypical bad girl saying, oh, you're just a dork, and...
She's not even that bad.
Like, it's not bad, but it's like, oh, you're just the, dork. Is like, is there any other reason why you're picking on Alex and Ray besides the fact that you're popular?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was very two-dimensional. I mean, I think once we go through the series, the secondary characters from the school and the friends become a little less two-dimensional, which is fun. But I agree. First season, Jessica especially was just like, she's picking on Alex just to be there.
Yeah.
And she wants Scott. So that's it.
Yeah, and Scott was, I mean, I know that, he started getting a little bit better throughout the series, and then eventually they just cut him off completely and replaced him with...
Yeah, that was a good choice on their part.
Yeah, another, good call. It's like, I'm glad that they were able to figure out that some of the characters were just not that interesting. And, Ray was not exactly a very interesting character for me either. I just felt like he was a poor version of Sam from Clarissa Explains It All. I think that ever since Clarissa Explains It All came out to Nickelodeon, every single show that had a female protagonist tried to be the next Clarissa Explains It All. I read in articles, back then in which they wanted Alex Mack to be a follow-up to Clarissa, kind of like taking the same bits and pieces of the formula, but change it around a little bit. And, you have the strong female protagonist trying to live her everyday normal life, and you have the best friend who's a guy who's, like, really goofy and silly. And the thing about with Sam is that while he was really goofy and, yes, supportive, he also had an interesting backstory discussing about that his parents weren't really much around, and then they actually, try to date around, like, the later seasons, but then it felt really awkward. But in the first season, Ray was just, like, the really goofy guy. I mean, especially in the episode in which there was the career day, and he followed around Danielle Atron trying to be all stuck up and trying to show off that, hey, how you doing, Danny? And it's like, okay.
Yeah. I think it's also because of how young they were. And that was my big problem with season 1, because they were just too young. I mean, I love the actors and glad that they kind of grew up in season 2, and they look different too. Maybe, I don't know how long of a year, as long of a gap it was between season 1 and season 2, but I just thought it was too young, and maybe that's why they had that immature humor with Ray.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, even admittedly, Clarissa also had that kind of immature humor as well. Clarissa starting off in middle school, and then the series concluded with her graduating from high school. So you do definitely get to see a progression over the other characters, which, that was pretty interesting. And just like you were saying previously about that, season 1 had a lot of one-off episodes in which it didn't really connect with one another. And there were some moments in which you felt like, why didn't Vince and Dave figure it out sooner about, the powers and stuff? Because in the episode Shock Value, in which Alex creates, like, the scientific experiment where, she decides to turn on these light bulbs without using like some sort of electrical force, and then all of a sudden, they're trying to figure out how it turned on, and we had the scene in which Vince, saw through the window about, she saw what was going on, and you would think that maybe they would actually know about it, considering that, it was in a different floor, and they were trying to look around and trying to piece things together, but they were just too distracted easily. And another one, going back to the career day episode in which Alex was using her powers and she didn't know that there were cameras being used. And, apparently it was only cameras in only certain rooms. You would think that when they try to sneak in and try to steal the videotape, it's like, why weren't there videotapes around the parking lot? Or why weren't there cameras around the main hallway or anything like that? It felt like a little bit of continuity errors, because you would think that a main power plant, the main power plant that pretty much supports the entire town, would have a lot more security than just some one guy who decides to watch TV around like 8 p.m. and then he's like gone for an hour, and then all of a sudden they can just sneak back, steal the tape, and then ride off in their bikes like nothing happened.
Yeah, and also the PowerPoint presentation, the power plant that had all this bad news because of this kid. Like, you would think they'd be a little bit more protective and have more security after that whole entire event.
Yeah, definitely. And, it would have been really nice if we would have gotten a little bit more reasoning behind on why they wanted to go after her in the first season. Like, we already know that, the GC-161 was a, top secret chemical, and I kind of understand why Alex didn't want to spill it out to her parents, because they did work at the power plant, and they would have been brung in for interrogation, and she would have been experimented on. But as for the main reason on why Danielle wanted the kid, it is never explained. Is she going to be turned over, to the police? Or is she afraid that the chemical kid is going to overrun her? Because, let's be honest, she pretty much took over the town. Are they afraid that maybe there'll be some sort of rebellion? Or maybe that the chemicals will go out of control and maybe it'll be a threat to the town? It's never explained. And if it was, it's very vague.
I think it's the reveal. I think at least what I insinuated from it is the reveal of what the chemicals actually do, because obviously the chemicals shouldn't be on the shelves, but she's trying to get it on the shelves. So I think that's why she wanted the kid. That way, if maybe the kid would announce, like, these chemicals are doing these things. Like, I guess the kid had the power with that, so she was very scared with not having her chemicals on the shelf. So I think that's where they're going. But I agree, for a kid show, they kind of should have explained it a little bit more. But you can insinuate that. That is true.
Anything else you want to discuss about Season 1 right before we move to Season 2?
I don't know, go to Season 2.
Alright, well, Season 2. Season 2 started to get a little bit better, but I felt that Season 2 focused a little bit less on the power plant and focused more about Alex trying to live off her everyday lives. And as we said before, this is when the character started to grow up and mature a little bit. And I felt that, Season 2 was a little bit better when it came to the characters, but it was still a tad bit underwhelming for me, considering that this is a girl who had powers and we didn't really see too much of Danielle or Dave or Vince, and it would have been nice to get a little bit more stories behind it, but what are your opinions on it?
See, I thought Season 2 was an improvement, because I do feel that the characters got better. I'm pretty sure that Lewis was introduced in Season 2, maybe he was introduced in Season 3. And I thought he was a really cool addition to that whole entire friendship between Ray and Alex, and trying to have another friend there and changing it up from Callisto Explains It All. But overall, I liked it. I do agree, like, throughout the whole series, or at least in these beginning seasons, they should have talked about the plant, but I thought this was a much better season for characters, like the Annie and Alex relationship, especially the Annie and Alex relationship.
I definitely agree. I think that the Annie-Alex relationship was consistently good throughout the series, because you have Annie, she's really intelligent, and she's experimenting on Alex to see if maybe they can be able to have control of the powers and see what to do with it. And they also had like this sisterly bond, which, for the most part of the time, we didn't really get a lot of that kind of sisterly bond. Going back to Clarissa again, she was always fighting against Ferguson, and they never really got along. So it's nice to have like this sisterly duo trying.
It was less comedic, I felt. It was more real, I would say.
Yeah, definitely more real. I mean, this came out like, almost 20 years before Frozen and Lilo and Stitch, so,
Definitely.
And also, another thing is that I felt that Ray started to become a little bit more improved as a character. He was still a little bit goofy, but at the same time, I felt that, they've written his character a little bit more tighter.
It was a good balance. I really liked Ray in season 2, again, because the whole Lewis thing, and then it's like, oh, are they going to be friends still? What's going to happen? It was that threat, but still they'll always be friends and be best friends, and it was explained there, and I felt like that was kind of real-life problems. When you go to middle school, will you lose your best friend from elementary school? So I thought, yeah, that was really, backwards, middle school going to high school. But yeah, I really enjoyed Ray's character a lot, and he still had the comedic value, though, but not too much. I thought his character totally improved season 2.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, you know, the first half of season 2 was kind of like character development, and then the second half of season 2, they decided to bring back the plot of GC 161. We had the episode in which Alex's father is starting to learn about GC 161, and then there's the episode in which you know, Ray starts videotaping Alex's powers, and, you know, he decides, oh, I'm going to enter this into some sort of video awards, and guess who the judges are? Danielle Atron. Wah, wah. So,
very fun episode.
Yeah. Season 2 was also where they brought in the Halloween and Christmas episode.
Mm-hmm. I loved the Christmas episode, less than the Halloween episode.
The Christmas episode I felt was a little bit goofy because, I mean, come on, this is Alex with a chimpanzee. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Cute by the end. She was trying to get presents wrapped, but I didn't love the Halloween episode. Well, honestly, a lot of the holiday episodes I just felt like kind of were forced.
Yeah, they were forced. It's like, hey, you know, we need to have a holiday episode because, you know, we have to. It's like tradition. And I felt like the holiday episodes weren't as put in as, you know, other shows. But, I mean, you can easily skip that. I mean, they had absolutely no purpose to the plot. But yeah. I felt like the beginning of season 2, I felt that this is when the character started developing a little bit more. And then the second half of season 2 is when they started to get things back on track, which I'm glad that they did, because I think that the creators were able to see the potential that it had.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think they showed the potential of where the show was going, and it just got more in depth with the mythology, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It was able to explain a little bit more about, you know, the power plant and GC 161 and the consequences that it would have caused. So I'm glad that, you know, it was able to give that mythos as opposed to, like, you know, skimming it over like they did with season 1.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely.
Anything that we want to discuss about with that, or can we go to season 3?
Go to season 3.
All right, season 3, yes. I think that, in my opinion, this is definitely when the series started to improve a lot. It definitely showcases a lot more about not only just the characters, but it also showcases a lot on, you know, a big threat. And, you know, it's kind of interesting about how this season was built up because, you know, once again, we got more character development. We have, you know, more kind of struggles with Alex and Ray.
And the premiere also. Think about the I'm trying to think of the episode name, is The Other Side, I think it was, where you have 2 Alexes. That was a 2-part episode, so you're starting to get more into this mythology.
That is true, yes. That was the episode in which I felt that, wow, now things are starting to get really interesting because 2 Alexes, and they're pretty much identical with one another, and she could have used her powers at any time, but, and, you know, it definitely kind of shows a kind of like a bit of tension, which I felt was really lacking in seasons 1 and 2. I mean, season 1, they tried to do that, but then it just felt, like, really convenient. But in my opinion, season 3 was when things started to become a tad bit of a threat, but then we'll discuss about how season 4 really upped it up.
Yes, definitely.
I think in season 3 was that Vince wasn't as much around in the episodes, but they brought in a new person, Lars.
He was more of a threat, though. Lars, because he had the connection with Alex's father. And also, I'm glad, we'll talk about this, but I'm glad what they did with Dave in season 3. Totally
yes.
glad.
Yes. I felt that Lars was what Vince should have been.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, he was a lot more threatening. It was a lot more of a connection towards the power plant and Alex's father. And he was much more of a threat. He wasn't as goofy with his acting as opposed to Vince in the first season, but I felt that, you know, this was when things started to become a little bit interesting. I felt that, you know, this is actually the point in season 3 in which you feel like you need to watch more of it just so you can find out what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and also Annie started working at the plant. There was just a lot more tension. And also, again, what I loved about this show is the 4 years of where Alex is just really growing up. And we get to see, I think, season 3 the most, where Alex is just starting to turn into a teenager and getting more responsibilities, and her parents wanting her to do more. I think that was like the doctor episode or whatever, where she goes to the doctor herself and she's like scared because of about the powers. So, and also we're getting ready for Annie to leave college. So it's a lot of these real world situations put in to a superhero type thing without being a superhero. And I think season 3 really heightens that.
Yeah, it was around this part in which, while Annie was leaving for college, Alex was going to high school. And, you know, she started building up a unique style of her own that wasn't like, you know, what we've been seeing in the previous seasons. We were able to see that the characters were able to change over time, and they were able to kind of connect with Alex because of that.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you.
And, you know, also not to mention that this was when she started to kind of make new friends and questioning about should she stay with her old ones. And then there's the episode in which that she starts having a new boyfriend, but then it turns out, oh, it's the same boyfriend that Annie has. And then another really good episode was the episode in which Alex meets up with Grace and they start becoming good friends. And then it turns out, oh, but, you know, she's actually a spy for the power plants.
Yeah, it put that threat. And going back to what you were saying about the friends, I thought the friends were at its highest here with character development. I think especially like Robin. I thought Robin was hysterical. I thought it really, you saw this group of friends form where season 1 it was really just Ray and Alex, and now you're seeing that it was plausible that all these people hung out with each other, and there was that threat. How about if these friends found out that Alex had powers? And I really like that. And you see in the high school that these friends change, and it's a lot of these real life problems for kids watching this show at this time.
Yes, and not to mention that the later episodes of season 3 was when things started to really heat up. Not only in meeting up with Grace, and not only that, you know, Alex is questioning about, you know, who should her, you know, she should stay with her old friends, she should make them new friends. Who should she trust at this point? But we also meet up with the person who originally created GC-161 and how dangerous it is. We start having the threat of Annie having the GC-161 research, and then all of a sudden she loses it, and now they have to be able to get it back right before somebody else finds it. And, you know, a whole bunch of other things that start building up this interesting mythos to the story.
Yeah, and especially with Annie trying to figure out about GC-161, and Dolores, like we were saying earlier, it just builds up this tension that season 2 and season 1 just did not have. So yeah, this season just improved on all levels. Secondary characters, main characters too. Alex grew so much this season. It's just everything was so much better with season 3.
Yeah, with season 1, I kind of understand why it had that kind of tone, because remember, it was being a follow-up to Clarissa Explains It All, and Clarissa Explains It All was hugely groundbreaking because it was one of the first shows that had a female protagonist that was for teenagers. I mean, I don't know which one came first, either that or Blossom, but
at least for Nickelodeon.
Well, yeah, that is true. It was for Nickelodeon. You know, with Nickelodeon being such a, you know, hugely popular network at the time, you know, creating, like, some of the most groundbreaking shows ever. You had the 3 original Nicktoons, you had Clarissa, you had Already Afraid of the Dark, you had the game show, so, I mean, when you have a legacy like Clarissa Explains It All, and then you're trying to be a follow-up to that, it is not easy, because they expect so much from you, and I think that in some parts, it was able to become a little bit smart, mixing in that kind of superhero meets with an everyday life thing, but season 1, it didn't realize that potential because it was trying to be like, oh, you know, girl living off an everyday life. But I'm glad that, you know, episodes from season 3 were able to bring that up a lot more.
Yeah, and I mean, such a powerful thing about this show also, which I'm sure we're going to talk about after we do the seasons, is that this is a female character that had superpowers, which we were talking about earlier, and that is something different from what Clarissa Explain It All was, because yeah, that was a female protagonist, but she was just a normal girl. Secret Girl Alex Mack she was a normal girl, kind of like Clarissa, but she has superpowers, and that also does well for the demographic. I know Clarissa, a lot of boys and girls watch the show too, but a lot of boys and girls are watching Secret Girl with Alex Mack, because girls see, oh, look, there's a girl on screen, I can relate to her, and the boys like, look, there's superpowers. So yeah. I think that's always a really strong thing.
And you want to know another thing that I found really interesting about it is that Alex doesn't want the powers. I mean, in season 1, it's very vaguely explained about why she doesn't want it, and then she kind of, like, does little things here and there, like the episode in which, Jessica challenges Alex and Ray for a basketball game, and she uses her powers to do that, or she does it does it for her homework. Another thing that I really thought was interesting was that, she's struggling to figure out, does she want her powers or not? And it kind of reminds me a little bit of Daredevil, in which Daredevil gets the chemicals and, he turns blind and he tries to work around with his powers, and then he decides that he's going to be the vigilante of the night. Well, Alex kind of doesn't do that at that, throughout the series until much later on. But it's kind of interesting about how we have, like, a female version of Daredevil in some sense.
Yeah, and what's also interesting about it, like you were saying in the beginning, she did not want her powers, but as the seasons go on, which we'll definitely talk about at season finale, as the seasons go on, you see that she's dependent on her powers, and because she didn't feel unique when the series started because of her sister, and what made her unique, and probably she feels better than her sister, is these powers. So I don't think she would ever take it away. Well, again, we'll talk about it. I don't think she would want to take it away because of that. And also what's awesome about it is that she's not a vigilante. She's not a superhero. She uses these powers selfishly, and you never see that with these shows. So I thought that was a really unique spin on a superpowered kind of teenage show, because you never see that. Because usually with, especially now, currently, they do shows where it's like, oh, I have superpowers, let me become a superhero. And they're not doing that, which is great with Girl with Alex Mack, because I've never seen that before. Usually when you get superpowers, you become a superhero, and she uses her powers selfishly, which is great. Of course, it's to protect herself from the plant, but she uses it selfishly. And going back to her powers, like you were saying, with her powers, of course, in the season 1, she doesn't want her powers, but she makes these powers are special for her. In season 1, she was ordinary. She wasn't any better than her sister, she felt. But with these powers, she felt better than her sister in ways because her sister needed her. So that's why, as the season goes on, what's so unique about the show, I think she grows to love her powers. And we'll talk about the season finale and, if she kept her powers or not. But I think that was really interesting about Alex.
Okay, now we can finally get into season 4, unless you have anything else to say about season 3.
No, yeah, go ahead.
Alright, season 4, the final season, and man, this is when things start getting really good. I can assure you that it's, I kind of feel a little bit towards, going back to Legend of Korra, in which you have the first 2 seasons, and they're a tad bit underwhelming. I mean, you kind of understand why, because, with Legend of Korra's case, it's like Nickelodeon was screwing around the schedules. It's like, oh, it's going to be a 12-part miniseries. Oh, the show became popular. Finish season 2 within a year. And, they were, like, really pressed for time. With Alex Mack's case, it's like, be a follow-up to Clarissa Explains It All, but put a little twist into it. And then they were trying to do something different to it. And then as time goes on, they started to build up a little bit more and more, and then season 3 and 4 become amazing. And, for many people, case for Legend of Korra, season 3 was amazing, and season 4 is shaping up to be really well, which I'm sure you'll talk about it at some point. I'll definitely talk about it at some point. But, I mean, season 4 was definitely, and hands down, the best season of Alex Mack, and it delves a lot more into it, where things start becoming a little bit more threatening. They're actually starting to figure out who the chemical kid is, and later on, Annie and Alex kind of, like, go their separate ways because Annie is starting to leave for college. Alex is already, in high school at this point. And not to mention that, Danielle starts becoming a little bit more suspicious about, who these girls, who this, the kid is. And this was another indication, I think, was it Hunter, I believe, who was introduced in season 4?
Yes, Hunter. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Hunter also, he becomes like the little snitch of the group because he's really suspicious on Alex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously that obviously just grows so much throughout the season. Hunter became one of my favorite characters, and I kind of wish that the show continued because I think he would have been, honestly, a better introduction in earlier seasons, and him finding out, because I would have liked to see more from his character. But yeah, I totally agree. Season 4 was great. I loved it.
Yeah, and I mean, Kim, and also not to mention, can we talk about the last 3 episodes?
Yes, let's talk. This is like, I feel like you could talk about these last 3 episodes all day.
Absolutely. So, 24 hours in which, Paradise Valley starts becoming really strange. It's starting to act up, and then everybody's just becoming really suspicious about what's going on. You have Paradise Lost, in which Danielle is planning on releasing the weight loss drug to pretty much everywhere in the world, and Alex is trying to, prevent that from happening. And as time goes on, the secret is revealed that she is the chemical kid. She's captured, and she's held into the power plant. Danielle is, gonna try to prevent her from coming out into the world, and eventually she captures her parents, and, there's a huge threat that's going on. And then Alex decides, how am I going to do this? Oh, I have an idea. I'm going to try to blow up the power plant. And then eventually everything is all figured out, and, the power plant shuts down. And then we have, of course, the final thing that many people have been debating on for years. You see, yes. Alex's father has the cure, and it is never revealed if she took it or not. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I personally think she didn't take it, because like we were saying earlier in this chat, is that she did not want her powers in the beginning. She was weirded out by them. She wanted to be normal in a way, but as the show went on, she loved her powers. She didn't want to get rid of them. And now that her parents know, I feel like it's so much easier for her. There is no threat. Why not have fun with these powers? That's what the show is always about, is having fun with the powers. It was never be like, I gotta be a superhero. It was having fun with it. And I feel like Alex Mack would still have fun with it. And I feel that smile in the end, it's like, hey, I know I have the antidote, but I'm gonna throw it, overboard. So I'm gonna keep my powers. That was always my personal opinion, that she kept the powers.
Yeah, I always felt like she would as well, because she was able to do so much with her powers, even though it wasn't like to benefit anybody around her. But I felt that, with all the changes that happened throughout the years of Alex, she was able to become this confident person that she always dreamt that she wanted to be. And I didn't think that she was going to either. I mean, there's been a bit of debate. Lynch says, I like to leave it up to the audience. Larissa Olnek said that maybe she did, or maybe she didn't. So, I mean, we'll never know. I mean, I do think that maybe this question was brought up a lot when they did the Alex Mack reunion panel not too long ago. I think it was like a year ago or something.
I did not know they did that. I have to check that out.
Yeah, I don't know if it was recorded or anything like that. I did read an article that they did a reunion panel or something, but it seemed really interesting. I'm glad that they were able to get some of the people back together, and was there any what were the highlights of the episodes as a whole, did you think?
Again, I think introducing new characters and just wrapping up the series in such a neat bow, and Alex having to do a lot of things by herself. The whole show was always like, Annie, help me. But now it's Alex having to deal with having the powers on her own. Of course, she had the help of, Ray and everything, but she really had to deal with it by herself. And growing up without having an older sister in the house, real life problems here. And, getting her first boyfriend with Hunter, and her friends, I think really growing through season 4. And one of my favorite things about the end of the season, or, the end of the series, is that we get to see a lot of people find out that Alex has these powers. The whole series really did well of not making anyone find out, but we have Hunter find out, Lewis find out. I would say even, what's her name right now? I can't think of it. Friend starts out, Robin find out, and the parents find out. Daniel Atron find out. So I thought that was a really cool twist. I still need a question, does Robin know? Because she saw it, does she believe? I think that's also a good question.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. All right, so as a whole, how would you think the show holds up?
I love it. I think it's such a different show. It was ahead of its time. Still I feel like networks can't get the female lead right for superheroes. And this wasn't even a superhero show. And also Nickelodeon having the struggle of having the demographics of boys and girls watching a show. So I think it was just so much ahead of its time, and I love it. I love the character development, the mythology, and just the whole general idea of the show. So great.
Yeah, when I first saw Alex Mack a few years back when I was doing the Nickelodeon tribute and reviewing it, I said that, it was disappointing. I said it was underwhelming. I said that there could have been so much more to it. And there are some parts in which I still kind of feel that way, especially when I rewatch seasons 1 and 2 again. I kind of almost dismissed it because, it's like, there's nothing interesting going on. But, as time went on, I'm glad that they were able to develop it a lot more. And I'm glad that they were able to bring up the questions that people have been asking. So, as a whole, I still think it's pretty well done. I think that there were a couple of shows, came out that after Alex Mack, they were able to improve it. Like, I felt, in my opinion, that, while Alex Mack was the one that revolutionized it, I think Buffy perfected it.
Oh, yeah, definitely, because Buffy also is not a kid show, so they had so many different things they could do with it, and I think Powerpuff Girls did a better job with it.
Absolutely, yeah.
To Alex Mack, again, she wasn't a hero. Buffy
I know.
ended up being a hero.
Yes, that is true,
I feel like
yes.
It's so different.
Yes, that is true. Buffy ended up being a hero, even though that it does have a mixture of action and school, and Powerpuff Girls, they were created to be superheroes. And, other shows for Nickelodeon, even though that, they had female protagonists later on, only 2 of them ever since then became, like, full-blown superheroes. You have Jenny from My Life as a Teenage Robot, and you had Korra from Legend of Korra. I mean, you could also say, what about Katara and all the other characters from Avatar: The Last Airbender?
But they were never main characters.
Exactly, they were never the main characters. All the other female characters that were featured, with the exception of Eliza Thornberry from The Wild Thornberries and Ginger Foutley from As Told by Ginger, and you had other live-action shows, but they were just, like, everyday things. Shelby Woo, from the Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, well, she was trying to be a detective. In my opinion, that's the least successful out of all the shows that try to be, like, the female protagonist, because it was just so bland and uninteresting.
No one talks about it. It's just like, yeah, I agree. It was just so boring. I tried watching it, and I'm like, nah, it's okay.
I mean, it's really redundant. I gotta say. The same thing pretty much happens all the time. I felt like this was Nickelodeon's attempt at trying to be like Ghost Rider, and Ghost Rider, the show from PBS back in the early 90s, where they try to be, like, all mysterious. They were, solving mysteries and involved with, like, this computer that, revealed information for them, for all the kids who don't know what Ghost Rider is. Let's see what else. And then, of course, you have pretty much all the Dan Schneider programs. The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh, iCarly.
That took over Nickelodeon.
Yeah, pretty much. And for my listeners, you all know how I feel about Dan Schneider. Anyway, but still, Alex Mack, I feel like it was a thing that kind of stood out on its own. It's not my favorite thing that Lynch created. Mine still goes to Caitlin's Way because of how it was able to bring back the realism that I felt that, he tried to do with Alex Mack, but it was at the same time trying to bring some action into it. And the journey of Alan Strange was a mess. It tried to be so much, it tried to be like, Alex Mack, trying to be like everyday situations, but then the alien coming over, but that had so much of an identity crisis, and it was being goofy and serious at the same time. And then you have Romeo, which that show is just awful. Don't watch it.
Yeah, I remember watching it when I was a kid. The only thing I liked about it was, like, I don't know if she was a nanny or not, but I thought she was kind of funny.
Oh, yeah. Victoria, what was it, Justice? No, not Victoria Justice. Victoria Jackson.
Yeah, she had, like, blonde hair.
Yeah, she was from SNL, and, she was in the first season, she was the nanny, and she was, like, all goofy, and it's funny because...
Part of the show.
Yeah, definitely the best part of the show, and then when they replaced her in season 2 with Master P's girlfriend, it was like, next. The only thing that I liked...
That's when the show went down.
Yeah, that's when Lynch's career pretty much went, to executive producer with shows such as The Troop and other shows from the end that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
But other than that, I still think that, while Alex Mack hasn't held up, by today's standards, I think it's still a really unique show that, you should at least check out if, maybe once, if not, like, sit through the whole thing. I mean, you can see, like, little bits of season 1, I would, if you want to see, like, all the action stuff, you would skip on to seasons 3 and 4, but, kind of, like, stick with it, that way you can be able to see the growth of the characters and the progression of how things are changing.
And that's why I recommend season 1 in a way, just because you see how much that show has grown and how much the characters have grown. I personally recommend it. I watch it at least once a year just because I love the show. So I personally just think it's a really unique show.
Yeah. One final question right before we conclude this. Would you ever like to see a reboot of Alex Mack?
It's really hard because I think Larissa Oleynik just portrayed that character so well, and I'm glad she's going back to acting. And that's why the show ended, was because she went to college, and, I applaud her for that. But now she's starting to get back into acting. She was on Pretty Little Liars and all that. I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, and also she was on an episode of Mad Men as well.
She was, yeah. She's starting to get back into the swing of thing. But it's just like Jamie Somers from Bionic Woman. I feel like it was kind of the same type of personalities where it's very, very hard to get those type of personalities on screen. Only a few actors can do it. And I think Larissa Olenek had that acting skill to make her like a normal person, and I kind of liked her quirks to herself. And especially with Nickelodeon today and their live action shows, I don't know if I would want to see a reboot. Especially for me, after Girl Meets World, I personally don't love it.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know. Like, I would love to see it just because I love girl Alex Mack, and I would like to see what they would do it in today's standards. But at the same time, I don't know if it'd be good.
I completely understand. As for me, when I did my list of the top 10 Nickelodeon shows I want to see remade almost 3 years ago, which, wow, 3 years ago, I listed Alex Mack as number 2 because I felt that there was more that could be brought up. I felt that, of course I mentioned about seasons 1 and 2, they haven't held up at all, and they wanted some more explanations behind it. And, it would be really interesting about, bringing it to a new generation. But then, after so much reboots and remakes and, Girl Meets World, I agree, it's not as good. It tries to be like a follow-up, but at the same time, it's trying to keep But
at the same time, it's too much like old. It's too much
like a Disney Channel. Yeah. Exactly. So, if they were to bring back Alex Mack, I'm afraid that it's going to be similar to a Nickelodeon sitcom of today, like Haunted Hathaways or The Thundermans. Oh, God! Yeah. Yes.
Perfect example of that. Because, like, Thundermans is like, if you see something that is just plain old one-shot and does nothing to the mythology, watch that show.
Yes, and Henry Danger. Oh, God.
I haven't seen that because I didn't even like the commercial for that.
So. I saw the 1 hour movie, and it's like, Dan Schneider, please take a break. Go on a hiatus.
Go on a Dan Schneider show. I did not know that.
Yes, you see, I don't know about you. I don't know if you heard the news about, how controversial the ending of Sam and Cat was because Ariana Grande and Janice McCurdy were not getting along. Apparently, Ariana was getting more money or something, and then there was supposed to be a second spin-off of iCarly called Gibby, but that was canceled. So, yeah, Dan Schneider, I guess he decided to make this one at the last minute because, live action shows and Dan Schneider, they're pretty much to and fro, and, all the other live action shows from Nickelodeon, they don't exactly... I'm just going to be flat out loud saying it sucks.
You don't like all the Dan Snyder live action shows?
Yeah, okay, I'm going to be quite honest. It's not that I hate the man, it's that I feel that Nickelodeon uses him way too much. He does the same thing.
He's oversaturated.
Yeah, he does the same things over and over and over again. I mean, yes, he was the producer of All That and Kenan and Kel. Yes, he created The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, Victorious, Sam and Cat, Henry Danger. Yes, he created all those shows. Yes, he's done a lot for Nickelodeon, I admit. But here's the thing. You see, if you look back on Drake and Josh, I think it's severely flawed. There's just too many things about the show that kind of not make it my favorite. Zoe 101 is it's okay. It's just that, the characters are for the most part a little bit mean-spirited. Like, I don't like Drake. He seems like the character that, he seems cool, but at the same time, he gets away with anything. And Josh is like the nice guy that you can relate to, but everybody treats him like crap. And
I guess that's the comedy of it, but I can see where you're coming from.
And then, Zoe 101, I from what I've, done my research on, that was kind of like Dan Schneider's attempt of trying to bring in Moody's Point as a actual spin-off series, by taking some of the same ideas. And it was definitely the weirdest out of all of them because it was the only one that didn't have a laugh track. It tried to bring in, like, this sort of love triangle thing.
Yeah, the love triangle did not work, but I thought the characters were pretty good for Zoe 101.
Actually, I say a little bit of the opposite because I felt that they were shallow and mean-spirited. Like, there were some episodes of Zoe 101 in which, if Zoe and some of the other girls don't like a person because they're different, they kind of dismiss her. But if she's like everybody else, they're okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I definitely see where you're coming from. I just think that's Dan Snyder's style of comedy, and I like his shows for the most part. But Henry Danger, I did not know that was on his shows. That doesn't even seem like one of his shows.
I know, it doesn't seem like a Dan Schneider program. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he's starting off from scratch, creating new spin-offs, because from what I've seen, none of the people who were on Dan Schneider's former shows are in Henry Danger. So
yeah, and usually he loves using his actors, which I do applaud him for. I like that he reuses his actors. And personally, I mean, I don't love every Dan Schneider show, but I think I do like him a lot. I do like his programming. But I can see, the difference of opinion for that.
That's true. I mean, I love the idea of a person trying to create a web series. I just felt it was a little bit too goofy for its own good. Like, for you, you do your videos and you do a lot of informative discussions and, I mean, you have a really decent fan base, but you didn't get like 40,000 subscribers in less than 18 hours.
Oh, yeah. It's not realistic, but, it's Dan Snyder's style of goofiness. He's been doing this since the 1990s of his goofy style, and you're going to either like it or hate it.
That's true.
For me, I like most of his shows. I'll say I liked all that. For the most part, I didn't like all the seasons. I liked Amanda's show especially. I liked Drake and Josh, I guess, because I was younger than you when I watched it too.
You're absolutely right. For a lot of people who watch my stuff, they're a lot younger than I am, and they discuss about, Drake and Josh was like the best thing of the 2000s, and the best live action show. And it's like, I guess I can see where you're coming at. I mean, it's a little bit similar to Kenan and Kel, and my favorite of the live action stuff from Nickelodeon was The Adventures of Pete and Pete. I can understand, for some people, it's kind of like, it's due to watching it when you were younger, and you know what, I'm totally cool with that. I mean, it's like when I saw Alex Mack for the first time in like almost 20 years before starting the Nickelodeon tribute. It's like, I loved it as a kid. I absolutely, would watch it over and over and over again. And then when I became older, I felt it was a bit underwhelming, and then I rewatched it again a few years later, and I was able to see, of course it's flawed, but it's not as bad as it could have been. It could have stuck with the whole everyday situation and focus a lot less on the power plant, which, if it was like the Thundermans.
Oh man, you might have to have a whole nother podcast for that, because that show is like, I want it to be good too, because it's superheroes, but it's not good at all.
Yes, I mean, we already had a show that tried to be a ripoff of The Incredibles like 10 years ago. Remember The X's, anybody?
I do, and that wasn't a good show either.
No, that show sucked.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that should be it. I mean, is there anything else we can discuss about Alex Mack right before we go? Or I think we're done.
No, just say, even if you're older or you're younger, I say go for watching it, especially if you're a superhero fan or just, into comic books. I think you'll especially like it.
Yeah, I agree just the same. If 2 years ago I would have said, no, don't check it out, it hasn't held up very well. Well, I kind of still keep somewhat of that mentality. I'm starting to see, the little appreciations of what Alex Mack did, and you know what? Check it out. Check it out. Maybe you'll see something in it that, maybe you won't get into it, maybe you will, who knows. Alright, well, that's it for this episode of Casual Chats. Would you like to plug or self-promote anything right before we go?
Yeah, thanks. Check out my channel, Comic Uno, Claire Heroes. I do comic book reviews, movie, TV reviews. Also check out our group channel, Comic Frontline, where we do comic book reviews, movies, video games, everything that you could describe there. And also check out my Kickstarter for my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. If you like strong female protagonists like Secret World Alex Mack, you should go check it out.
Alright, wonderful. And that is it for this episode of Casual Chats. Hopefully by the time that this video is up, I will be leaving for New York City to participate in the Night of Nickelodeon Nostalgic Nonsense, which will be...
That is awesome. I'll be at New York Comic Con.
No way! You're going to be in New York too? Wow, small world.
Well, all weekend, so that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to be at the Nickelodeon of Nostalgic Nonsense book event, which is at the Hammerstein Ballroom, and it will be at Thursday, October 9th. Tickets are still available if you are interested, but please hurry up. They are selling out so quickly. VIP tickets are gone. Some of the guests that will be there are Daniel Sawyer and Fred Newman from Doug, who will be singing songs from The Beats. Danny Tamborelli and Mike Morona from Pete and Pete will be there, and they'll be doing their podcast, The Adventures of Danny and Mike. And last but not least, for the first time in almost 15 years, Polaris, the band from Pete and Pete, will be performing their new album and some songs from Pete and Pete that you may remember. And what would you be doing at New York Comic Con Comic Uno?
I am going to be exploring the floors, got some interviews to do, so I'll be there all 4 days. I'm going to go see TV Pals, Cora panel.
Oh, you're so lucky. I want to go to the Cora panel.
I'm super excited for it. I'm going to wait online. I have class today. I'm like, you know what? No, I'm going to...
Go. It's the final season of Cora. Go.
Yeah, I'm going. Trust me. Thursday I'm going. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's going to be really fun. I'll have videos, interviews, so check it out.
Yes, please check it out. I'll be posting it like crazy when that comes out. So until then, we hope to see you in the next episode. So bye-bye.